I did not mean to read my son's messages. He left his phone on the edge of my bathroom sink. The screen lit and woke itself. A bubble opened with my name inside it. Sign the transfer tonight, and we can list the house in 2 weeks. Do not let him back out. The words burned through the steam from the shower. I am Thomas Reed, widower, carpenter by habit, even after retirement. This house is my hands turned into walls and floors. The porch smells like cedar. The staircase sings when the night is quiet. I built it for my wife, Ruth, and for our boy. Family is not a plan on paper. It is a table with chairs and plates, and the sound of someone laughing. Nathan knocked that same hour. He brought his wife Lauren, and a pie that looked store-bought, but brave. They kissed my cheek as if nothing had ever cracked between us. He said there was good news. He said a new beginning. He said I should bring my old fountain pen to supper so we could fix a few papers before dessert. He did not know what I had seen. I set the pie on Ruth's blue plate. I poured coffee for them and tea for me. I watched the flame under the kettle like a sun I could still command. The phone in my pocket hummed again. Another message flashed. Make sure he drinks the calm one if he gets loud. My hands slowed on the cups. Lauren talked about the children and how the rent had climbed. Nathan asked about my back and my truck, and if the attic still leaked. He reached for my pen and rolled it between his fingers. Dad, he said, tonight we make it simple. You sign. We manage. And you can rest. That is all any of us want. I looked at the empty chair across from me. Ruth's chair. I saw the soft dent her weight left in the cushion. I set my cup down so gently that it made no sound. I told my son to fetch more firewood from the porch. He stood and took his coat. When the door closed, I turned the phone face down. I breathed. I decided I would not shout. I would listen and learn what my own blood planned to do to me. I lived on Maple Street in a small Massachusetts town where winter clings to the curbs until March and salt chews the pickup trucks by April. The house sits 2 blocks from the river. Morning light slides across the oak floor and draws bright paths that Ruth used to follow in her socks. I still talk to her when I sweep. It is not religion, it is habit. It is love that does not know where to go. I met Ruth at a summer fair. She wore a yellow dress and ate a strawberry snow cone that dyed her lip red. We were 20 and broke and certain. I learned carpentry from my father, and she learned everything from books. She became a nurse. I learned to frame walls by feel. We saved. We built. We planted a maple in the front yard the year Nathan was born. It is taller than the roof now. Nathan arrived loud and healthy. He could sleep only on my chest for months. I would sit in the rocker and count the minutes by the click in the old clock. When he toddled, he used a chisel like a wand and waved it at the air. When he was 8, he sanded the banister with me and called the dust moon smoke. When he turned 16, I handed him the keys to a dented Ford and whispered a prayer that felt like glue pressed into a crack. Then came the slow drift. College took him away. Debt followed him home like a stray dog that would not leave. He married Lauren at the city office and swore he would never move back to a town that smells like cut lumber. They tried the city. They tried thin walls and big dreams. They tried startups that promised equity and delivered silence. They tried to buy a condo during a year when interest rates rose like a tide. They rented instead and told me it was temporary. Nothing lasts longer than something called temporary. We had good months. We had Sunday dinners that tasted like the old days. Lauren would bring salad, and I would grill pork chops on the stoop. The kids ran the yard and climbed the maple and told secrets to a dog even though we do not have one. Then the laugh would fade and I would see the way Nathan watched the house. His eyes moved the way a carpenter reads a plan. He counted windows. He did not know he was doing it. I did. I kept a small shop in the garage. It smells like pine and machine oil and honest work. I still take orders from neighbors. A table here. A porch swing there. The money does not matter. My hands wake up when I draw the first line on a board. In the corner sits a cedar chest I promised to finish for Ellie. She is 10 and already keeps sketches inside that she wants to paint on the lid. Max is 7 and wants to build a boat out of scrap. I keep a savings book in the top drawer of the kitchen desk. Ruth and I used to sit with that book and 2 mugs and no television and make plans. Replace the roof in 2022. New furnace in 2024. A week on the coast if the car holds. After she passed, I kept the book. I crossed out the trips and drew a box around birthdays. I wrote the names of the children. Grief is strange. It leaves the light on and then hides your keys. Lauren calls me Dad, even when she is mad. She has a kind heart and a fast mouth. She can stretch $1 in ways that look like magic. She works at a clinic and misses nursing school that she never finished. Her father left when she was 9. She trusts paper because people fail. Paper held our license. Paper held the deed. Paper can also erase you with one pen stroke if you are not looking. The night before the message, I sat with Nathan on the back steps. The air smelled like wood smoke. He stared at the dark yard and said he felt like a man walking on a frozen lake and hearing the ice sing. I told him to come home on Sundays. He nodded. He said, "Time is loud when you are broke." I put a hand on his shoulder and felt the hard line that money draws across a young back. I thought the line would soften. I was wrong. I am not a rich man. The house is the value. The shop is a toy that pays for its tools. What I have is equity and a pension that looks bigger on paper than in the store. I have windows that face east. I have Ruth's wedding ring in a velvet box and her recipe card for blueberry pie, smudged with butter. I have 2 grandchildren who think sawdust is glitter. I thought that would be enough to carry all of us across the hard years. It turns out the hard years do not care what you think. On Maple Street, the mail comes after noon. The postman leaves packages on the cherry bench. He asks about Ruth every spring, even though I told him. I thank him and close the door. And the house returns to its quiet rhythm. The fridge hums. The clock ticks. Somewhere in that rhythm I believed my son was safe inside the circle we made. I see now that the circle had a door and I had left it open. I set the table early and kept my shirt clean. I sharpened a knife that did not need it. I lit a small fire and opened the damper. The house felt ready. I wanted control of the room before they arrived. I checked the cupboard. The good glasses stood in a neat row. Nathan knocked at 6. He did not wait for me to reach the door. He came in fast with a hug that pressed the air from my chest. Lauren followed with a casserole. Her smile looked careful. I saw the edge of a folder in her tote. We ate in the kitchen. The talk was fine. Fine is a word that means there is a crack under the paint. Nathan asked about the maple and the roof and the furnace. He praised the light in the front room. After plates were cleared, he placed the folder on the table. He set my fountain pen beside it. The pen was heavy and honest. I had used it to sign mortgages and birth certificates. Nathan rested both hands on the folder as if it might run. "Dad," he said, "we have been talking with a planner. He says you should not carry the stress of a big house. He says we can place the deed in a family trust. You will be protected. We will handle repairs and taxes. You will have more cash each month. You can keep your workshop and a room for yourself." I asked to see the papers. Lauren slid them over. The first page spoke like a salesman. The second page started to bite. Titles and transfers and a clause that could move decisions without my voice. I read slowly. I tapped a line and asked what it meant. Nathan waved it away. "Legal salt." He said that twice. "What is the hurry?" I asked. Nathan took a breath. "The market is good for selling in the spring. We want to be ready. We can refinance now and secure a rate. We can move you to a place near the park with a nurse on call. You will not be alone." "I am not alone," I said. "Ruth is here." My work is here. The neighbors are mine. I cook my own dinners. I mow my lawn. He smiled like a man who hears a child talk about a fort made of blankets. That is not safe, Dad. A fall can end everything. One bad winter and the pipes could burst. Think of the children. Think of us. We are drowning. Lauren spoke then. You have more value tied up in wood and land than most people see in 2 lives. We are not asking you to give it away. We are asking you to share it while you can watch what it saves. She touched my wrist. We want to help you. I asked who drafted the papers. A friend from their church group. He does real estate. He gave them a discount. I nodded and read the signature lines again. My name weighted 3 times in black. I set the papers down and looked at my son. Tell me the whole plan. No fog. Clear words. He looked at the window. We list in April. We buy a house with a yard for Ellie and Max. You move into a residence near us. We visit every other day. We take over your bills. We make sure your shop is moved. We manage the rest. I asked who holds the trust. Nathan said he would be the trustee. Lauren would be successor. I asked what happens if we disagree. He said it will not come to that. I said pretend it does. He said then the trustee decides. He meant himself. I thought of the message I had seen. Sign the transfer tonight. We can take our time, I said. I will let my lawyer read this. We will talk after the new year. I will not sign tonight. The air changed. Nathan leaned back as if someone had pulled his chair. No need to drag a lawyer into a family matter. This is simple. This is trust. He tapped the folder. Dad, he said. Do you trust me? I told him I love him. That is not the same word. He stood. His voice rose. We drove here through slush and bad headlights to make your life easier. You are clinging to wood and memory while we count coins at a gas station. This house is a box full of money. He pointed at the ceiling and said, I cannot keep waiting for a ghost to tell you what to do. Lauren put a hand on his arm. She said you can be free of stairs and ladders. The children can run in a yard without you worrying about taxes. This is not theft. It is strategy. I stood as well. I said my answer was not a no to help. It was a no to tonight. It was a no to a signature I did not understand. Nathan asked how many winters I had left before this house swallowed me whole. He called me stubborn. He called me brave and foolish at the same time. He finally said, pick up the pen. Say yes like a man who loves his family. The pen looked like a nail on a clean board. I left it on the table. No. I said, we do this slow. We do this right. Nathan closed his eyes. He gathered the papers with a sharp motion. He slid the folder into the tote. He thanked me for dinner. He said we would discuss again soon. Lauren kissed my cheek and called me Dad. At the door he turned. He asked one more time if I trusted him. I told him I trust him to be my son. I trust him to be scared. I trust myself to keep my home until I choose to leave it. He opened the door. They went out. I stood in the quiet and listened to the wood settle. I put the pen away and locked the drawer. When I sat down, the chair gave its little sigh. I should have felt strong. Instead, I felt the floor tilt a degree. Not enough to see. Enough to know the night had opened a seam that would not close on its own. The morning after, frost drew silver webs across the windows. I sat at the table with a cup of coffee that went cold in my hands. My lawyer's card lay beside it. I turned it over and over but did not call. Calling would mean I no longer trusted my son at all. A father does not want to cross that line. A father tells himself things can be mended. By noon, I heard tires crunch on the driveway. Nathan came alone. He carried no folder this time. Only his voice sharp with impatience. Dad, you are making this harder than it has to be. I told him I had read the documents and needed more time. He dropped his coat on the chair and began to pace. You think I am plotting against you. You think I am some stranger off the street. I am your son. I said that is why I must be careful. Trust is heavy. It must be held with 2 hands. He stopped pacing and faced me. His eyes were wet, but his jaw was tight. We are drowning, he said. We are late on rent. The kids need shoes. Max needs a dentist. We cannot keep this up. We need the house. I reminded him of the savings I had offered last year. A small sum, but mine to give. He waved it away like dust. Not enough. Drops in a bucket with holes. You sit here surrounded by wood worth more than any check you ever wrote us. He struck the wall with the flat of his hand. The sound echoed through the house like a shot. I asked him to sit. I poured coffee for him. He refused. He walked to the window and pointed at the yard. The maple tree stood bare, its limbs thin against the pale sky. That tree could pay our debts if you cut it and sold the wood. You care more for that tree than for us. His voice broke. I rose then. I told him he was wrong. I care for him more than my breath, but I will not cut the roots that keep me standing. I built this place for Ruth and for him. It is not a coin in a slot machine. It is blood in the beams. He turned. Face flushed. You are selfish. You keep saying you love us, but you hide behind boards and memories. You will die in this house and leave us nothing but taxes. The words cut deep. I felt Ruth's picture on the mantel behind me. Her smile fixed in silver. I told him enough. I told him to leave before his anger tore us apart. He stared a long time. Then he grabbed his coat and slammed the door so hard the glass rattled. Silence pressed in. I walked to the mantel and lifted Ruth's photo. I whispered her name. My hands trembled. The house felt less like a home and more like a fortress under siege. I sank into my chair and listened to the pipes groan in the walls. I wondered when my son had stopped being the boy who sanded the banister with me. That night, sleep would not come. I replayed his words. Selfish, greedy, old. I thought of Ellie and Max, their drawings, their laughter, their small arms around my neck. What will they remember when they are grown? Will they remember a grandfather who held his ground? Or a man too proud to bend? Near midnight, I opened the safe hidden in the bedroom wall. Inside lay envelopes of cash saved over years. Not much, but honest. 10,000. I stacked the bills on the table and stared. It looked like hope. It looked like insult. Would this help him or only make him despise me more? I pressed my palms to my eyes until I saw sparks. By dawn, I had decided I would offer it. I would say I was sorry for my anger. I would show him that love is not numbers in a ledger. I would give what I had and pray it built a bridge instead of a wall. I called in the morning and asked Nathan to meet me at the house. I did not want to sound like a judge. I wanted to sound like a father who had slept badly and still chose kindness. He stood in the kitchen doorway and kept his hands in his pockets as if warmth belonged to someone else. I set an envelope on the table. It held the savings I had gathered for years. 10,000. I told him it was for a bridge. I told him I wanted him steady while we made a wiser plan. I said we could talk to a counselor about budgets and to a lawyer about safe ways to share risk. He did not sit. He stared at the envelope as if it were a trick. He asked what was inside, even though he knew. I told him again. He opened it and thumbed the bills. He laughed once. It was not a happy sound. He said this would not even move the needle on a down payment in our county. He said I was playing at help like a man tossing crumbs to a family at a locked door. It hurt. I told him it was what I had in cash. I told him the rest of my worth was tied to wood and land. He said, then shave the whole loaf. Sell. Refinance. Sign the trust. He pushed the envelope back as if it smelled wrong. Lauren came that afternoon with the children. Ellie ran to the shop to show me a sketch. Max asked if we could build a birdhouse. For a few minutes the house felt right again. Then Lauren asked if we could talk in private. Her voice was careful. Her eyes were tired. She said they had met a man who helps families place elders somewhere safe. She said the residence had a nurse on duty and a bright dining room. I asked where my shop would go. She said the garage could be cleared. Nathan would convert it to a rental and use the income for their mortgage. My tools could be stored in a shed behind their new house. She said it would be temporary. I looked at the shop door and felt my chest tighten. Then she asked for something that made the air go thin. She asked me to add Nathan to my account so he could pay my bills. She asked for a power of attorney that would let him handle emergencies. She said it was paperwork. She said it would keep me safe. She reached for my hand and called me Dad. I asked who had told them to request all of that at once. She mentioned the church friend again. She said he had drawn up forms and could come by after dinner. Her voice softened. She said the children were tired of moving every year. She said Ellie needed a desk. She said Max had started to grind his teeth at night. I told her I would not sign anything that day. I told her I would meet a neutral advisor first. I told her I would help in other ways while we learned what was safe. Nathan returned in the evening. Snow clung to his hair. He said a man can drown while he interviews swim coaches. He said we needed action. He sat across from me and placed a printed list on the table. The list asked me to move by March, to transfer the deed by month end, to sign a letter that would let Nathan be my voice for medical care, to hand over the title to the truck so he could sell it, to open a joint account for my pension and auto pay, to gift them the cash now so they could place an offer by Friday. I read the list and felt a heat in my face I did not recognize. I kept my voice even. I told him no to the truck, no to the joint account, no to any transfer until my lawyer was present. I told him I would not be rushed. His mouth tightened. He said he was trying to keep his children housed. He said I was choosing a staircase over a son. Ellie stood in the doorway then. She had heard more than any child should. She asked if I was moving away. Max clung to her sleeve. I said I was not leaving them. I said I would always be where they could find me. Nathan saw their faces and lowered his voice. He said we could finish later. He gathered the list and pushed back his chair. At the door he turned to me and spoke softly, which somehow hurt worse. He said if I kept refusing, he would have to ask my doctor to evaluate me. He said, sometimes, age makes a man stubborn in ways that are not safe. He said there were legal paths when a parent no longer makes sound choices. He said he did not want that. He said I could prevent it by trusting him tonight. I told him to leave. I told him we would not speak again until everyone could do it without threats. He stepped into the cold and did not look back. Lauren followed with the children. Her eyes were bright with tears she did not let fall. When the house was quiet, I sat with the envelope. I pressed it flat and slid it back into the safe. I stood in the shop and ran my hand along the bench. I turned off the light and listened to the dark. The hurt found the low places and filled them. I told Ruth I needed her steadiness. I knew we had passed a line we might not cross back. I sat until the room dimmed. The clock ticked like a small animal in the wall. I felt older than my years. I felt like a man everyone loved for what he could give, not for who he was. Still, ChatGPT d'annoy. The next week I moved like a man in fog. I swept the porch. I cut kindling. I brewed coffee and let it go cold. Each small chore kept me from thinking too long. But the silence had weight. It pressed on my chest at night. I caught myself listening for Ruth's voice, the way a dog waits for footsteps that will not return. On Thursday, the phone rang. It was Lauren. She sounded bright. Too bright. Like someone rehearsing lines. She said the children missed me. She said Nathan wanted me to come for dinner on Sunday. She promised no papers this time. No arguments. Just food and family. I wanted to believe her. I told her I would think about it. That night I opened the drawer where Ruth's recipe cards still live. I found her Christmas pudding notes, stained and creased. I read her neat script. Stir gently. Do not overmix. Steam for 6 hours. My throat tightened. I thought of how she would have handled Nathan. She would have cut through his anger and found the fear underneath. She would have seen what I could not. Friday, I took out the envelope again. 10,000. I spread the bills on the table like a deck of cards. They looked pitiful against the weight of the house, but they were still a gift. They still carried hours of my back bent under rafters. Years of lunches skipped. Overtime swallowed. I wanted my son to see love in that stack. Saturday, I walked to the maple tree. Its branches were bare and black against the winter sky. I placed a hand on the trunk. My ring finger touched the groove. Ruth and I carved the year we married. T+R. It was still there, though shallow now. My hand shook. I whispered that I would not let the house go this way. Sunday came. I drove to their duplex with the pudding wrapped in cloth. I carried gifts for the children in brown bags tied with ribbon. Ellie squealed when she saw me. Max clutched my leg. Lauren welcomed me with a hug and a smile that almost felt real. Nathan shook my hand too firmly and told me he was glad I came. The table was set with china I had never seen before. The food was warm. The air filled with spice. For a while we ate in peace. Ellie sang a school song. Max showed me a drawing of a rocket. I laughed. It felt good. It felt dangerous to believe. After dinner, Nathan rose to fetch wine. He spoke of a bottle from a vineyard in California. A gift from a friend. He poured glasses at the counter. His back blocked my view. He carried the tray to the table with too much care. He set a glass in front of me. My eyes fell on his jacket pocket. For a moment I saw a small packet slip from it. Pale and thin. His hand moved quick. His smile was fixed. He raised his glass. To family, he said. To trust. Lauren lifted hers. The children clinked juice cups. I lifted mine, slowly. The glass caught the light. I looked at Nathan. I remembered the message on his phone. Make sure he drinks the calm one if he gets loud. My stomach turned. I touched the rim of the glass to my lips but did not drink. The room felt colder. The laughter thinned. Nathan watched me too closely. I set the glass down without sound. I told myself to wait, to keep my face calm, to learn if the trap was real. My heart pounded like a hammer in a hollow wall. I looked at Ruth's photo in my wallet. Tucked behind my license, I thought of her steady eyes. I thought of how she told me once that when people show you who they are, you must believe them. The toast ended. The meal went on, but every bite was ash. I saw Nathan's hand tremble when he reached for his fork. I saw Lauren's eyes flick to me and then away. I knew. The room had changed. My family had become strangers who smiled too hard. Lauren stood to check a pie. Nathan followed her to the kitchen. Their voices dropped to low threads I could not catch. The door swung on its hinge and clicked before it settled. I stared at the glasses. Mine sat near my right hand. His sat by the carving knife at his place. I reached for a napkin and coughed to cover the scrape of my chair. Ellie and Max were busy with a small puzzle Lauren had placed by their plates. I slid my glass toward me. My hand trembled once. I stopped it with a breath. I lifted Nathan's glass and set it where mine had been. I moved mine to his place and turned the base a 1/4 inch so the light would not betray a ring on the table. My heart chose a gallop and would not slow. The hallway was quiet. I heard a cupboard open and close. I looked at the children. They did not see. They did not need to know what a man learns at a table with his own blood. I folded the napkin and placed it like a flag on my plate. Nathan came back first. He wore that same bright smile that never touched his eyes. He reached for the tray to collect the empty bowls and paused. His glance fell to the glasses. He blinked once. He did not speak. Lauren followed him with the pie and a pitcher of cream. She laughed too high and wiped a spot that was not there. To new beginnings, Nathan said. He lifted the glass that sat near his plate, the one I had moved. He waited for me to raise mine. I touched my lips to the rim of the glass by my hand and took a breath that tasted like metal. We drank together. I tasted nothing but fear and a faint note of oak. He swallowed hard. I watched his throat work. He set the glass down. He checked his watch, the way a man checks the sky for rain. A minute spread out. The room looked normal and wrong at the same time. Ellie asked if we could open gifts. Lauren said after dessert. The pie steamed when she cut it. I forced a smile for the children. I asked Max about his rocket drawing. He told me about the fins and how he had used a ruler for the first time. Nathan shifted in his chair. He tugged at his collar. He reached for water and missed the glass by an inch. He made a joke about the room being warm and laughed at his own voice. Lauren stilled. She watched him without turning her head. "Dad," he said. His voice had dropped a note. He pressed his palm to his stomach. Must be the rich food. He tried to stand, then sat again. His breath came fast and shallow. A red spot rose on his cheekbones. Ellie stopped talking. Max stared at his father as if seeing him through glass. I kept my seat. My hands were steady now. I asked Lauren to bring him water. She went to the sink and came back with an empty smile and a full glass. He sipped. He pushed the plate away. He tried again to stand and almost made it. The chair skidded and bumped the wall. "What did you put in my wine?" "Nathan." The question left my mouth before I could soften it. His head snapped toward me. His eyes were wide and young for a flicker. He shook his head. "Nothing. You are imagining things." He tried to smile. His lips went pale. I told him I had seen the packet. I told him I had seen the careful way he placed one glass on the tray. I told him I raised him to build straight and to speak plain. I asked him to do that now. His hands opened and closed on the table like fish. He took a step. He did not make it to the hallway. He clutched his stomach and bent. A sound tore out of him. The children cried at once. Lauren reached for him, and then for me, and then for the phone, and could not choose. I moved the children to the couch. I told them to stay there. I told them to listen to Grandpa. The bathroom door slammed, and the house shook. The sounds that followed were sharp and human and private. They filled the narrow hall. Lauren pressed a hand to her mouth. Her eyes shone with fear and something that looked like guilt. I sat at the table and looked at the glass near my hand. A ring of red clung to the side. I smelled the wine and caught a bitter note under the fruit. I thought of Ruth and how she would have told me to take the children home and lock the door. My legs would not move. Lauren whispered that it was only something to calm me. Only a gentle push. Just to make the talk easier. She said the dose was small. She said he had not meant to hurt me. She spoke fast. Her words slid and broke. I listened and felt old. When the bathroom fell quiet, she knocked and called his name. He answered in a thin voice. He said he would be fine. He said to give the children pie. I gathered my coat and my keys. I told Lauren I was leaving. I told her that whatever they planned had ended. I told her to tell Nathan that a father can forgive much. Poison is not one of those things. Outside, the night was cold and clean. I set the pudding back in the car. I drove home without the radio. The house met me with the smell of cedar and the tick of the clock. I sat in Ruth's chair and placed my hand on the arm where her fingers had polished the grain. I did not cry. Not yet. The tears waited at the edge like weather. The next morning the house smelled of ashes. I had let the fire die in the night. I woke in Ruth's chair with my coat still on. The phone blinked with 3 missed calls. 1 from Lauren, 2 from Nathan. I did not return them. I boiled water, poured it over grounds, and sat with a mug I could not drink. At 9 the phone rang again. I let it ring. Then I picked it up. Nathan's voice came thin, cracked. Dad, I am sorry. I should not have said those things. I should not have pushed you. I should not have made you doubt me. He spoke as if the words were cards laid one by one. He asked if we could meet. He asked if I would come for Christmas Eve. He said the children wanted me there. I told him I needed time. He said time was what we did not have. He said the lease was ending. He said he and Lauren were falling behind. He said Christmas could heal us. He said he wanted to show me that family mattered more than anger. I closed my eyes and heard Ruth's voice in memory. Family first, she always said. But she never imagined poison at a holiday table. I agreed to think about it. After the call, I sat long at the window. Snow fell steady. The maple stood black against the white. I wondered if Ruth would forgive me for doubting her son. I wondered if she would have trusted one more chance. Later, I drove into town. I bought gifts. For Ellie, a box of paints and a thick pad of paper. For Max, a set of blocks and a kit to build a small bridge. At the register, the young clerk smiled and said, "My grandchildren were lucky." I felt my throat tighten. I told her they deserved more luck than I could give. That evening, I opened Ruth's recipe box again. My fingers traced her handwriting. I gathered the ingredients: flour, sugar, eggs, dried fruit, brandy. I measured slowly. I stirred gently. The kitchen filled with the smell of Christmas. It filled with memory. I whispered her name and asked her to stand with me. The next days blurred into tasks. Wrapping paper crinkled, ribbons tied. The pudding steamed for hours in the pot she had used every December. I ironed my only suit. I polished my shoes. I looked in the mirror and saw lines that had deepened in a single week. On Christmas Eve, I placed the gifts in the car. I carried the pudding wrapped in cloth. I drove through streets lined with lights. Families moved behind glowing windows. Laughter spilled onto porches. The world looked whole. My hands gripped the wheel too tight. When I arrived, the children ran to the door. Their joy was real and pure. They pulled me inside and shouted about Santa. Lauren kissed my cheek and took my coat. Nathan smiled wide and thanked me for coming. His smile did not reach his eyes. The table was set with silver and glass. A turkey steamed in the center. Candles glowed. For a time, it felt almost safe. Ellie sat beside me and showed me her drawings. Max told me about a science project at school. I listened and smiled and let my guard fall by inches. Then Nathan stood with the bottle of wine. He held it up to the candlelight. He said it was special, a gift from a friend. He poured with care. He set a glass in front of me with too much precision. He raised his own. To family, he said. To trust. His eyes held mine. I lifted the glass. The wine caught the light. I thought of the packet I had seen before. I thought of his hand shaking after the switch. I thought of Ruth's words about believing what people show you. My lips touched the rim. I did not drink. My heart beat like a drum under the floorboards. He drank. He smiled. He waited. Minutes passed. His smile faltered. His hand touched his stomach. He shifted in his seat. Lauren glanced at him. Then at me. The children laughed at a joke they did not hear. The air thickened. The clock ticked. I sat still and silent and waited for truth to show itself. Lauren set down her fork. The candle flame moved with the air from the vent. Nathan tried to laugh and failed. He said it was the turkey. He said it was the pie. He said it was nothing. He pressed his palm to his ribs and tried to stand. His knee hit the table and the silver rang. Max began to cry. Ellie sat very still, her hands flat on the cloth. I told them it was all right. I spoke softly. I used the voice I had used when Nathan was small and feverish. Lauren reached for her phone and could not remember where she had left it. She found it in the kitchen and came back with it pressed to her chest. Nathan took 2 steps and the room tilted for him. He caught himself on the doorway. His face had gone gray. Sweat rose on his temple. He swore he would be fine, then bent forward and made a sound that let the room know he would not. Lauren looked at me. Her eyes were huge and wet. I nodded toward the hallway. Help him. I will hold the children. In the bathroom, he tried to be quiet for the sake of the kids. He failed. Sounds carried down the hall. I took Ellie and Max to the couch and put the throw over their knees. I turned on the small lamp and told them about the time their father and I built a fort out of blankets, and Ruth pretended not to see. Their faces eased a little. They leaned into me and my shirt grew damp with their tears. Lauren came back to the dining room with shaking hands. She whispered that it was her fault. She said she had let the plan turn into something cruel. She said she had only wanted me calm, so the talk would not turn into a fight. She stared at the wine glass as if it might speak. I told her we would not argue with the past. I told her we were here now. She asked if she should call for help. I said yes. Do not call a friend. Call an ambulance. Tell them a man has sudden vomiting and weakness after a meal. Tell the truth when they ask what he drank. She nodded and dialed. Her voice was fast but clear. I stood and moved the glasses away from the plates. I did not hide them. I knew a paramedic would understand the shape of the scene. When the siren grew loud outside, Ellie began to shake. I put my arm around her shoulders and told her the people arriving were good at their work. The door opened and 2 men and a woman came in with a stretcher. They were kind and brisk. They asked Nathan his name and his age. They asked what he had eaten. They asked about the wine. He tried to joke again and failed. They looked at me. I met their eyes and did not look away. One of them asked if anyone else had taken a sip. I said not me. He looked at the rim of my glass. He looked at the rim of Nathan's. I saw understanding pass across his face like a shadow. He did not say anything in front of the children. He only nodded once and told his partner to start the line. The needle found the vein. The fluids ran. The color in Nathan's face shifted from chalk to something human. They took him to the hospital. Lauren followed in her car. I stayed with Ellie and Max. I washed the plates and did not look at the wine stains as I worked. I helped them into pajamas. They kept at the duplex for nights when I babysat. I read a short story about a rabbit that lives in a garden. When their eyes closed, I sat in the chair by the window and watched the neighbors return from services. I felt both very old and very steady. Near midnight, Lauren called from the emergency room. Her voice shook. They think it was something mixed with wine. His vitals are stable now. They want to keep him overnight. She asked if I would come. I told her the children were sleeping. I told her I could not leave them alone. I told her I would come in the morning and speak to the doctor without blame and without drama. I slept on the couch. At dawn, Max padded out and climbed onto my chest the way Nathan used to. He asked if Daddy would die. I told him no. I told him Daddy had made a bad choice that hurt him. I told him grown-ups can make mistakes as large as the room and still be capable of love. He traced the seam on my shirt and nodded, as if he understood. At the hospital later, the nurse greeted me like family. She said Nate had been lucky. The doctor used quiet words. He asked if there was anyone he should call. He asked if stress had been high. He did not ask if the glass had been switched, but his eyes held the question. I told him the children were my first concern. I told him I would make sure they were safe. He said, sometimes the aftermath of a scare can be worse than the scare itself. He told me to watch for it. Lauren reached for my hand in the hallway. She cried without sound for a long minute. She said she had begged him to throw the packet away. She said he had told her it would only make me drowsy. She said he wanted to move the talk past my stubbornness. She said she had not known he would go through with it. She asked if I would forgive her. I said forgiveness is a door that opens and closes many times before it stays one way. I said I was not ready to speak about forgiveness. I said I would take Ellie and Max for a few days so she could breathe. When we left the hospital, the winter sun sat low and cold. I buckled the children into my truck and drove home to Maple Street. The house smelled like cedar and coffee. I set out the paints for Ellie and the blocks for Max. They filled the rooms with small, normal sounds. I stood in the doorway to the shop and felt the weight shift inside me. Love moved to one side. Safety moved to the other. I knew which way I had to lean. That evening, I called the non-emergency line at the police station. I told the officer who I was. I told him what had happened in plain language. I said I was not pressing charges that night. I said I wanted a record that might protect the children and me if fear turned into more bad choices later. He listened. He asked careful questions. He told me I had done the right thing. Word travels fast in a small town. By the next day, the neighbor across the street brought soup and eyes that wanted news. I kept my answers short and kind. The pastor from their church left a message that said he was praying for all of us and that he was at my service if I wanted counsel. I thanked him by text and did not call. On the third day, Nathan came home. He did not call me. Lauren sent a message that said he was physically fine and very quiet. I stood in the kitchen and read those words twice. A father wants to be the first call and the last person his son lies to. I was neither. I went to the safe and took out the small envelope and set it on the counter. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put it back. That night I lay awake in Ruth's chair. The children slept down the hall in the guest room under quilts she had sewn. I whispered to her that our son had not died. I whispered that the children had laughed while they painted at the table. I whispered that I did not know how to love him in a way that did not also endanger me. In the quiet, I could hear the house breathing. It did not judge. It only held. The week passed with no call from Nathan. Only short notes from Lauren about bills. About medicine. About silence at their dinner table. I answered when I had to. But I gave no more than yes or no. At night I sat in the shop with a block of cedar and a chisel. The sound of the blade against wood steadied me. On Thursday, the lawyer called back. I had left him a message after the hospital. He asked if I was safe. He asked if I wanted to file. I said no. Not yet. I said I wanted to discuss my will. He was quiet. Then said, of course. We set a time. Friday morning I met him downtown. His office smelled of old paper and lemon polish. He wore glasses that had slipped to the tip of his nose. He pulled my file from a drawer. Ruth's handwriting was on the older documents. Seeing it almost broke me. He asked what changes I wanted. I told him plain. The house and my accounts should no longer flow to Nathan and Lauren. The children should have a trust. The rest should go to a hospital for sick kids. He asked if I was sure. I said yes. He said the papers would be ready in a week. When I drove home, snow fell heavy. The maple bent under the weight. I parked and stood under its branches. My hands burned from the cold. I told Ruth that I was protecting what we had built. I told her the children would have a chance when they grew. I told her our son had made his choice. That night, the phone rang. Nathan's voice was hoarse. He asked if the children were with me. I said yes. He asked if they were safe. I said yes. He said good. Then silence. Then he said he had ruined everything. He said he had lost me. He said he did not know how to step back. I told him he had to try. He hung up. Lauren called an hour later. She was crying. She said he had packed a bag. She said he had gone out into the snow. She asked if I had spoken to him. I said yes, but only for a moment. She begged me to help. She begged me to forgive. She begged me to remember the boy who once built birdhouses with me in the yard. I told her I could not forget that boy. I told her I did not recognize the man. The next day, Nathan appeared in my driveway. His car was half buried in snow. He walked to the porch with bare hands red from cold. He asked to come in. I let him. He sat at the table where the safe envelope still lay. He looked at it, then at me. He said he had wanted more than I could give. He said he had been desperate. He said he had been wrong. I listened. I asked him if he knew what almost happened at Christmas. He nodded. His face broke. He cried into his hands. He said he had thought it would only make me drowsy. He said he had not thought it through. He said he had wanted control more than he had wanted love. I told him I could not trust him now. I told him I loved him still, but from a distance. I told him I would keep the children safe in my house whenever they needed. He nodded again. He said he understood. He left without his coat. I watched him walk away down Maple Street, smaller with every step. That evening I lit the fire. The children sat by the hearth and painted. Their voices rose and fell. I thought of Ruth. I thought of all the winters we had crossed together. I felt the ache of loss and the weight of relief at once. Sunday morning I met with the pastor. He asked if I had room in my heart for forgiveness. I said forgiveness was not the same as forgetting. He said true. He prayed with me anyway. I left the church with a heavy chest and a lighter step. When I returned home, the children were in the yard. They built a small fort from snow blocks. They waved when they saw me. Their laughter cut through the cold like a bell. I raised a hand. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. The house stood behind me. The maple bent but did not break. Inside, I called the lawyer again. I told him I wanted the papers signed as soon as possible. He said Tuesday. I marked the calendar. I poured coffee. I sat in Ruth's chair. I told her I was ready to close one door and open another. Tuesday came with a sky the color of tin. I woke before the alarm and made coffee I did not finish. Ellie and Max were still asleep in the guest room. I stood in the doorway and watched their small shapes under quilts Ruth had sewn from old shirts. I wanted to keep them in that soft world forever. But morning is a door you cannot hold shut. At 10, I parked outside the lawyer's office. The sidewalk was salted and wet. I carried a folder with insurance cards, the deed copy, the list I had made at the kitchen desk. My hand did not shake when I signed the visitor book. The receptionist smiled and led me back. The lawyer rose and offered his hand. He read each page aloud. The will named a children's hospital as the main heir. A trust held funds for Ellie and Max that they could not touch until 25. The house would be sold after I passed, and the proceeds divided according to the plan. Nathan and Lauren had no claim. There was a letter to the court about my intent. There was a separate note for the grandchildren, written in my own hand, that said they were loved beyond measure. My voice wavered when I asked to sign. 2 witnesses came in from the front. They smelled like winter and coffee. I placed my name where lines waited. I dated each page. The lawyer slid the pages into a fireproof envelope and handed me copies. He asked if I wanted to add a power of attorney to someone I trust. I shook my head. Not now. He nodded as if he had expected that answer for years. Before I left, I asked about something else. How does a man draw a clear circle and ask the law to keep it so? He explained orders that prevent contact, and guardianship forms, and what it means to be competent. He spoke slowly. He did not press. He said boundaries are not fences you build once. They are doors you choose to lock every day. I thanked him. I tucked the envelope under my arm. At home, the house smelled like soap and heat and the faint iron of snow. Ellie was painting at the kitchen table. Max was on the floor building a bridge that arched between 2 chairs. He asked if I knew how to make it stronger. I showed him how to brace the span with a triangle. He beamed the way boys do when a shape turns into strength. Ellie held up a small portrait of Ruth that she had made from memory. The eyes were right. The mouth was brave. I told her it was perfect and I meant it. In the afternoon, I called Lauren. I told her I had signed new documents. I said the children would be provided for someday, but that I was done being a wallet other people could reach into. I said there would be no transfers and no trust where I was the last to know. She cried again. She said she understood. She asked if she could bring the children home that night. I asked to keep them one more day. She agreed and thanked me for being steady when the ground had moved. As dusk came, the phone rang. Nathan. I let it go to the machine. His voice filled the room anyway. He said he had heard about the lawyer. He said I was cutting him out of my life as if he were a stranger. He said he was sorry, and then he said he was angry in the same breath. He asked what kind of father gives his house to people he has never met. He asked if I had ever planned to trust him again. His words knocked against each other and fell. He hung up without a goodbye. I stood at the window until the glass went cold under my fingers. I remembered the boy who once fell asleep against my chest in a rocking chair while Ruth sang under her breath. I remembered the teenager who broke a window and came to me shaking and told the truth before anyone asked. I remembered the young man who carried a couch up 3 flights so his wife would not have to. I thought of the man who had set a glass of wine in front of his father. All those people live in one face. I could love the first and still fear the last. After dinner, I wrote a letter by hand. I told Nathan I loved him. I told him the door was open for conversation that did not require signatures, or threats, or medicine hidden in a pocket. I told him that if he needed help with food, I would bring groceries. If he needed the children watched, I would be there. I told him I would not discuss my house, my truck, or my accounts. I told him we would set those 3 words on a high shelf where neither of us could reach without a ladder. I sealed the envelope and set it on the hall table for the morning mail. When I tucked Ellie and Max into bed, Ellie asked if families could break. I told her families can bend and creak and even split in a storm, but they can also be joined again with care. She asked if the joining leaves a line. I said yes. And sometimes the line is the most honest part. She looked at the ceiling for a long time and then closed her eyes. I went to the shop and turned on the small radio. It played a song Ruth loved. I set a board on the bench and drew a clean line with a carpenter's pencil. The graphite left a mark that made sense. My hands knew what to do next. I cut and sanded and wiped the grain with oil. The wood took the shine. It did not argue. It did not ask for more than I could give. The next morning, the postman took my letter. I watched him fold it into his bag and walk down the street. The house was quiet except for the children stirring. I made oatmeal the way Ruth used to, with brown sugar and a knob of butter. Ellie said it tasted like memory. Max said it tasted like glue but ate it anyway. I laughed, and the sound startled me. Lauren came by mid-afternoon. Her face was pale, but her eyes softer than before. She thanked me for keeping the children safe. She said Nathan was restless, pacing rooms, mumbling apologies and plans in the same breath. She said she was afraid he might do something reckless. I told her my letter would reach him today. I told her it was all I could offer without endangering myself. When they left, the house grew empty again. I sat in Ruth's chair and thought of the years gone. I remembered our first Christmas in the house. The tree leaned to one side because I cut it too short. Ruth tied it with fishing line to the wall. We laughed until we cried. Nathan had been 5, handing us ornaments and singing off-key. The memory pressed hard on my chest. 2 days later, the phone rang at dusk. Nathan again. His voice was raw. He said he had read my letter. He said he understood the rules. He said he hated them but understood. He asked if I would come by for Sunday supper. He swore no papers, no wine, no tricks, just family. I told him I would think. He said please. Then he hung up. I paced the kitchen. I set the kettle on and forgot to light the flame. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to see my son healed. But I remembered the packet in his hand. The smile that hid fear. I walked to the safe and touched the envelope inside. It felt like a stone that would never turn to bread. Sunday came gray and wet. I drove anyway. I carried no pudding, no pen. I carried only a heart that ached. Lauren opened the door. She looked relieved. Nathan stood behind her. Thinner. His eyes ringed with sleepless nights. He hugged me before I could choose. His arms were desperate. He whispered, "Thank you." Dinner was plain. Soup. Bread. Applesauce from a jar. The children filled the space with chatter. For a while it felt almost like old times. Then silence settled. Nathan cleared his throat. He said he had been to a doctor. He said the doctor warned him about stress and control. He said he wanted to change. He asked if I could help him learn. I told him change is slow. I told him it means showing up each day without schemes. I told him it means being honest even when it costs. He nodded. He said he would try. His hands shook as he lifted his spoon. When I left, the children hugged me at the door. Lauren thanked me again. Nathan looked like he wanted to speak but did not. I drove home under streetlights that blurred in the rain. I parked in the drive and sat with the engine off. The house glowed warm through the windows. For the first time, I did not feel like a fortress under siege. I felt like a man who had survived a storm but carried scars the eye could not see. Inside, I made tea and stood at the mantel. Ruth's picture caught the light. I told her I had faced him. I told her he had not broken me. I told her I would keep the children close. I told her our work was safe. The tea went cold in my hand, but the house stayed warm. The next morning I signed the final set of documents at the lawyer's office. He placed them in a sealed envelope for the court. I walked out into bright sun on snow. My breath clouded. My chest lifted. The weight was not gone, but it was mine to carry now. Back home, I hung the children's drawings on the fridge. Ellie's portrait of Ruth. Max's bridge. I looked at them and felt tears rise. They fell without shame. The house did not mind. The maple outside did not mind. The children would return next weekend. Life would continue with lines marked, with doors closed and others left open. And when night came, I lit the fire, sat in Ruth's chair, and let the warmth climb my legs. I whispered her name and thanked her for the strength to finish. I closed my eyes. The wood cracked. The clock ticked. I was not whole, but I was steady. A week later, Ellie had a winter recital in the school gym. I sat on the bleacher with a paper program. Children in paper crowns waved. When the lights dimmed, the hush felt clean. Ellie found me with her eyes. She lifted her recorder. The first notes were thin and brave. Max clapped too early and did not care. Ruth would have filmed the song and then cried in the car. I held the program like a hand. After the bows, the crowd moved toward the doors. Nathan waited by the exit with his hands in his pockets. He saw me and came closer. His voice was quiet. "Thank you for coming. She looked for you first thing." I said I would not miss it. He nodded. We stood like men on a dock, unsure how to speak across water. He said he was going to meetings. A counselor had given him words for anger and fear. He had not touched a drink since the hospital. He was tired of trying to bend the world. He asked if he could send me a message each week. No asks. No plans. Just a report that he was still trying. I told him yes. I told him I wanted him steady even from a distance. I told him I would come to the school and the games. I told him I would always answer if the message said help for the children. I told him I would not meet anywhere with a paper waiting on a table. He said he understood. His eyes went red. He wiped them with his sleeve like a boy who did not want the class to see. In the lot, he touched the maple leaf sticker on my bumper. He asked if the tree was holding. I said it was. He said, "Good." He said he was sorry once more. The plain way. I put a hand on his shoulder. Then I drove home. The cedar chest for Ellie was almost done. I carved a small leaf on the lid and set the hinges true. Inside I laid a note that said this was for her drawings and for the secrets she would not tell yet. For Max I shaped a bridge from maple, with a span he could tighten with a key. I wrapped both and placed them high in the closet to save for spring. At the desk I wrote letters to each child for their 25th birthday. I told Ellie to paint, even when a roof leak makes the paper curl. I told Max to build with patience and to check his level twice. I told them to forgive their father when they could do it without losing themselves. I sealed the envelopes and slid them into the safe next to the will. The sound the door made was small and honest. On Sunday, I drove to the cemetery. The ground was hard and clean. I brushed snow from Ruth's name. I told her the house was safe. I told her the chest was almost ready. I told her our son had started to walk. One careful step, then another. I ate a sandwich on the bench and left half for the birds. The sky was a cold blue. I sat until my toes ached. Then I said goodbye. That night I finished the chest. I rubbed oil into the wood until it shone. I closed the lid and listened to the clean click. I set it under the guest room window where the morning light falls. I stood there a long time with my palms flat on the lid. I thought of all the hands that would touch it. Before bed, I walked the house. I checked the stove. I checked the locks. In the living room, I paused by Ruth's chair. I did not sit. I touched the back where her head would rest. I whispered, "Thank you." Then I went to my room and lay down. The house was quiet. The maple moved once and was still. I am not a whole story, and I am not a ruin. I am a man in a house built by two steady hands. I keep the porch light on for those who need to find the steps. I keep the door locked for those who forget how to knock. When I close my eyes, I see Ruth in the kitchen. I see Ellie with paint on her fingers. I see Max over a bridge. I see Nathan at a door. Breathing. Choosing. I let the pictures come. I let the tears come. And then I sleep.